I'm so thrilled and delighted that you came out. Rubin brought the freezing cold. It was not my fault. And if you're scared of the snake, it was Vicki Winston's idea. Right here, tall lady. This is really a culmination of a wonderful relationship and friendship that I thank completely Vicki for, because I've had the privilege of getting to go to that crazy party in New York at the Met for many, many years. And I've always somehow feel like a schleprock no matter what I wear, because you're next to Giselle and this one, and Tom Ford sewed that dress personally, and everyone's a model, and then there's me. And it's really tough to wear a dress to that party. And last year, you might know that it was punk was the theme. And I called Vicki in a panic, and I said, what am I going to do? And I had called many others too. And nobody had a great solution except Vicki. And she said, there's this designer. And you might have seen, he did these amazing corsets at the Super Bowl for Beyonce. And I was like, And meanwhile, I'm Googling, I'm going, because, you know, I had not kind of noticed that part of the Super Bowl. And there they were, and they were so sexy and so sizzling and so hot. And Rubin had made those incredible pieces for Beyonce. I said, I'm in. And so Vicki arranged for me to meet Rubin. And if you haven't seen the dress that he made, please ask him. It's on his phone. He made me, for the first time at the Costume Institute, feel like an absolute princess. And my husband can agree with that, because I looked incredible. And for the first time, I stood next to Giselle with my shoulders back, and I felt fantastic. And so, Rubin, I'm so grateful to you. You've become a dear friend, because not only is he an amazing talent, but he's like the nicest guy you'd ever want to know. And so who wouldn't want to help a genius who's nice? And so it's my great pleasure to present to you Rubin Singer.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm very excited to be here, and very grateful to Roger and Sloan for having me. So what you're seeing here tonight, yes?
First, my husband wants you to tell a bit of your story.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm a third generation of Russian fashion designers. I grew up under the tutelage of my father, who was designing, I was born in Austria. My parents defected from the Soviet Union in the 70s, and I was brought up around fashion. I grew up, in Paris, where I studied couture under my father, and then subsequently moved to New York when I was 10 years old. Shortly, when I started working professionally, I started at Oscar de la Renta for 4 years, and then moved on to Bill Blass, and have now been doing my eponymous collection for six years. But my history goes even further back, and I'm named after my grandfather Rubin, who was a designer also in Poland. He worked in Warsaw and in Paris, and when Warsaw was invaded by the Germans, he was forced to walk by foot into Russia, into the Soviet Union. And after escaping the Nazis, he was captured by the communists and forced to mine for coal. And he said, this is not what I do. I make clothing, I don't mine for coal. And so he was given some fabric, a needle, a scissor, and some thread, and was commanded to make a suit within a week's time by hand. He made the suit, and the officer was impressed enough that he brought him to Moscow and commanded him to do the same thing for Stalin himself. And after he did that, Stalin took it upon himself to officiate him as the first official costume designer and couturier of the Soviet Union and the Communist Party. And so there was
first story,
story. And so it was an anomaly that a Polish Jew who barely spoke Russian was in this position of power, and he became very, very successful throughout his whole entire career. And my father started studying under him when he was 13. And his first job was to do the costumes for the horses and elephants of the Moscow circus at the age of 16. Wow. And then at 21, he was brought and officiated himself as the costume designer for the Bolshoi Ballet and the Stanislavski Theater. And so this is kind of where I come from. This is my history, it's my passion, it's my love. And I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to do what I love and to honor my history and my family, honestly, and to have people like Sloan and Roger support this history and my work, and you know, expose me to all of these wonderful people, and it's an incredible gift. So I'm very, very grateful to you both. Thank you, and I hope you guys enjoy the collection, and thank you for having me, and thank you for coming.
Can you give us 2 minutes on the inspiration and
Yes,
kind of,
absolutely.
do you have a snake at home, or what's this?
Yeah, so the inspiration for this collection came about actually on the heels of what I had done for the fall collection, which was called Valkyrie's Dominion, and that's kind of what Beyonce ended up, what we ended up doing for Beyonce was an outgrowth of the last collection. And so Sloan was very much in the middle of all of that whole moment that I was in when I was doing her dress, and then Beyonce had asked me to work on the costumes for her upcoming tour at the time. And so initially I was doing there's five characters that she was personifying in her show. And I was doing the last one, which was like the sexy wife, you know, after the Super Bowl, which made sense. And then they came into the studio to see the collection, and the mothers and Beyonce said, no, we want you to do the Queen. We want you to do the opening of the show. And so they presented me with, you know, Marie Antoinette and Madame de Pompadour, and I kind of thought, well, that's kind of predictable. Let's see where else we can go with that. And so I started doing research on queens. Queen of the Night, Queen Amidala, Queen of Hearts, and I kind of started researching dynastic queens of ancient Egypt. And so we did a few pieces for her for the tour, and I kind of got stuck in Egypt. And as I was living in the world of Egypt and all of these, you know, Hatshepsut and all of these queens, I realized that there was very little clothing in Egypt. So I was kind of like, oh no, what have I done? It's all loincloths and headdresses. And so I got very scared. My fabrics were kind of already on the way of being ordered. It was getting close to the time I had to really birth the collection, and I was very scared. And so I did a lot of soul searching and research and kind of focused myself and kind of got out of that fearful state once the clothes started to come about. But yeah, so that's kind of where the base of the collection came about. And for example, the blue gown and that skirt are based on a photograph that I took of one of the tombs on the wall paintings, and it was transposed onto fabric. The stripes, for example, are very indicative of Egypt, so I really wanted to make a very impactful and powerful gown out of that. There was a lot of Greco-Roman influences in Egypt as well, which is kind of where you see the pleating and the short tunics. And the Serpent Queen concept came about because, well, the Egyptian empire fell apart with Cleopatra, and she was the most opulent and most famous of all the queens in modern day history, and so she was called the Serpent Queen, and that's what the collection is called. So there we go.
Beautiful. Anyone who's a little bit cold